What's up, fellow Hoops fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Last Shot NBA show here on Little Birdie TV. And as always, we are brought to you by our good friends at topsport.com.au. Now it's Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning means a very special guest, and we have the most special of the special guests today. I'm excited. He's a good friend of mine. I haven't seen him in a while. He's also the Knicks beat writer for The Athletic, Mr. Fred Katz. How are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm thrilled to be on with you, man. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you again. And you know what? Like I mentioned, you're the Knicks beat writer. We've got a lot to talk about with the New York Knicks. As everyone knows, that's my team as well. So I've already gone through some ups and downs with this team already this season, Fred. And I guess my first question to you is, what is going on at the New York Knicks? I feel like I've asked that question for about 19 seasons in a row now. But what is going on at the New York Knicks?
It's a great question because it requires a very long answer, right?
We've got time.
Last year it was just, hey, after years of no success at all and almost a decade of sub 500 teams, they're playing hard and they're playing defense and they're gritty and they're winning games and they're accelerating at the end of the year to get the 4 seed, and that's your answer. That's what's going on with the New York Knicks. And this year, it's just, there is so much to encapsulate over these first 33 games where they get up to the 5-1 start. They look like they're really, going to be a problem in the Eastern Conference, especially after an undefeated preseason. Then the defense totally and completely starts to fall off. After they were 4th in points allowed per possession last year, they've fallen into the bottom 10 so far this year. They brought in the new additions of Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier. Fournier, I think, has underperformed the contract so far. Still plenty of time left in it, but he's underperformed it to this point. And Kemba Walker has had the extremely odd roller coaster season of starting the first 18 games, getting not just pulled from the starting lineup, but from the rotation altogether for 9 consecutive games. He missed 10 consecutive games, then getting thrust back into the starting lineup, averaging like 27 a game since he went back into the starting lineup. Julius Randle has not been as great. They've had a ton of guys in health and safety protocols, which obviously is just kind of the norm now around the league, but that's obviously affected them like it's affected many other teams. RJ Barrett has been inconsistent, and they've fallen to 15 and 18 so far this year. They're 11th or 12th in the East right now, and the East is so log jammed. They could get back in the play-in picture for sure, but they could also fall out of it. Well, they got an easy stretch coming up, so we'll see how they handle that.
Well, you mentioned that they're only 2 games behind the 8th seed. They're in 12th at the moment, but they're only 2 games out of the 8th seed. So it is very doable if they've got a nice little stretch now, go on a bit of a run, and you're right back in the mix there. You've mentioned a lot of guys that I want to touch on, in terms of individual sort of seasons. Let's start with Julius Randle, actually, because last season, first time All-Star, or second time, I can't remember if it was, but he was an All-Star last season. The play's fallen off a lot this year, and I'm a Julius Randle fan, but I just don't think he's a franchise player. The Knicks are paying him as a franchise player. I don't think he is one. I don't think he's the number 1 option, maybe a 2, even a 3 on a really good team. What have you seen from Julius this year? And do you think that's a fair assessment that I'm actually making about him?
I think that's fair. I mean, if you're watching the video version of this, you're going to see my eyes, swerving around the screen right now. And the reason why is because I'm going to call up exactly what the Julius Randle stat of the season has been in my mind in a second. He is not. It's kind of a cliche when you say it in a particular way, but he hasn't contributed to winning in the way that he did last year when he made second team. Wasn't just an All-Star, one most improved player. He made second team All NBA. And here's the stat of the season that I referenced before. The Knicks are 17.8 points per 100 possessions worse when Julius Randle is on the floor.
Wow.
Which is astonishing. Like 17.8 per 100. Like that's basically, I'd have to double check it, but that's basically the difference between like the best team in the league and the worst team in the league. And I know you have to take those numbers with a grain of salt when it's an individual player and overall lineup constructions come into the conversation as well. But just to give a perspective of how drastic their success has or just how downtrodden they've been with Randle on the floor. I mean, 17.8 points per 100 possessions, and we're no longer at a small enough sample size to just be able to ignore that and write it off as nothing. I think offensively, it's really been on both sides of the floor, to be honest. I think his defense has taken a hit. He's taken a hit in transition defense, and offensively, we're kind of seeing a similar type of style to what he played last year, except last year he hit jump shots at a rate that he had never done before. I mean, wasn't just that he shot over 40 from three. He was hitting these ridiculously difficult mid-range contested fall away shots that he dribble into. And, he was looking like Carmelo Anthony basich in the Knicks uniform.
Yeah.
And this year he's been one of the least efficient, high volume mid-range scorers in the entire league. And that's a big hit. Last year, he was one of the best. The three-point shooting has fallen from in the 40s to 33, 34%, which is not inexcusable. It's just a huge dive from what he was at last year. And I think that's had a major effect on the Knicks offense, because ultimately he's still responsible for so many of those facilitating duties. He'll still get swarmed by, double teams, and that can kind of disrupt him. And the Knicks offense just hasn't quite looked the same because of it. And he's not the sole reason the defense has fallen off. There are a million other reasons the defense has fallen off. When you talk about the defense falling off, one of the things that you mentioned is that Julius Randle had probably the best defensive season of his career last year. And this year he hasn't been at that level, as many others on that team haven't.
It's incredible to say that about a Tom Thibodeau team, isn't it? That the defense has really fallen off. That's been the hallmark of his teams over so many seasons. And just to sort of be talking about them like this right now, how do they fix it, Fred?
It's a great question. I think part of it will probably fix itself to a degree, in that Mitchell Robinson showed up to this. So much of their defense is predicated on rim protection, right? And you know this. I mean, Tom Thibodeau cares so much about rim protection. You're not going to find a coach in the NBA who says, I don't care about rim protection, but you're not going to find a coach in the NBA who cares more about rim protection. And it's not just talk with Tibbs. You look at the way that he schemes his defenses, and he schemes his defenses all around, we are not giving up dunks, we are not giving up layups, right? Like, he wants perimeter defenders to be helping and collapsing in on the paint. They pack the paint defensively. It's just part of their identity, and it's always part of a Tibbs team's identity. That's just the way he wants to play. That's kind of part of his basketball DNA in the way that he coaches. And they have some of the best individual rim protectors in the league in Mitchell Robinson and Nerlens Noel. But Mitchell Robinson was admittedly out of shape at the beginning of this season. He was recovering from a foot injury. And, he fully admitted, hey, I was dealing with foot surgery, couldn't run, and my conditioning, he put on a lot of weight intentionally, and then some weight unintentionally, and his conditioning wasn't up to snuff. And he admitted to it, and you could see it on the court. He didn't have that Mitchell Robinson bounce. And Nerlens Noel has been hurt for the majority of the season and not able to play. And when you build so much of your defense around those rim protectors, and then the rim protectors either aren't there or aren't up to their personal standards, then things are going to get worse. Now, their paint defense has been okay. They've been really bad guarding the three-point line. That's really been their struggle. Part of that comes back to the paint, because if you cut off the paint, then teams aren't able to as easily create a lot of those open threes. But I think part of that will fix itself when Mitchell Robinson has looked a little better lately. I think part of that will fix itself if Mitchell Robinson starts playing like himself, if Nerlens Noel comes back healthy. I don't know how they fix everything, though. Like, I don't see them recovering to top 5 defensive levels like they were at last year. They gave up an inordinately low 3-point percentage last year, to where a lot of analytically inclined people thought, okay, they benefited from, some randomness there. And that 3-point percentage allowed is going to climb this year. And that's something that we have seen. Those people seem to have hit that totally on the nose. But I don't see them climbing to the top 5. I don't know if I see them climbing into the top 10, to be honest, without them making maybe a serious move, or I don't know. Tom Thibodeau and that coaching staff know a lot more about basketball than me. Maybe there's a scheme change that they adjust and it changes some stuff, but they've struggled guarding the perimeter. They've really not been good in transition. They've given up a lot of threes. They've allowed too many guys to get to the middle, too many role players to go off against them, and it's just been a problem for them.
You mentioned making a move. The trade deadline is mid-Feb or Feb 19. Can't remember the exact date. There's so many dates in the NBA. I lose track of all the major ones, but it's in February sometime. 3 weeks ago, a month ago, Kemba Walker was rumored to be on the trading block. They were looking to move him already. They were looking to make some moves. I don't think, you know better than me, but I don't think they're going to trade Kemba now, especially, how well he's been playing. But do you see them making a major move this season, before the trade deadline? Or do they ride it out with what they've got, try to fix whatever, they think is going wrong, and then make a major move in the summer?
Leon Rose, team president, does not talk to the media often. He did do a preseason press conference before this year began. And he didn't say very much during that press conference, but it was very clear that one of his major themes, if not the major theme from that media availability, was the desire to create long-term flexibility. And I think unless there's an absolutely gigantic move, like unless we're talking about a Damian Lillard trade or something like that, I don't see a major move that hurts their flexibility happening. Especially if they meander around 10th, 11th, 12th in the East. The East is so deep and it's so tough. And there are really 13 teams that can beat you on any night, which is not a thing we've said about the East for a long time.
Yeah, that's right.
They might be better off just moving forward. Now, maybe Miles Turner, someone like that, they feel like, hey, we can make a okay offer for that. And we think we can get Miles Turner for 80 cents on the dollar. And hey, we talk about rim protection and Mitchell Robinson's an unrestricted free agent after this year. Well, Miles Turner is maybe the best shot blocker in the whole league. So go get that guy. And offensively, he's actually a really good fit next to Julius Randle. Doesn't necessarily need the ball, shoots threes, sets screens. Perfect. So maybe something like that. They go for it. But I think like trades for major guys, it's kind of tough for them. It would take a lot of players to go match salary on a max contract or something like that. And quite frankly, I don't know how incredible their offer is for, a Damian Lillard or something like that right now. I mean, what is the great offer? Some of their own draft picks, which are not unbelievable. It's not like this is, a team that's destined for top 5 in the draft or something like that. And if they trade their pick, then they won't tank. So some of their own draft picks, they have the Dallas draft picks. They have a heavily protected Charlotte draft pick. Those aren't going to be desirable picks. And they've got their own young guys, which I don't think anybody views as like that guy, future all-star, hands down. I'm sure we'll talk about RJ Barrett at some point, but the interesting part of RJ Barrett, and I feel like at some point I'll write something about this, just this perspective, which is his development, whether he is with the Knicks for 20 years or 20 more days, his development is so important for the future of this franchise, because people always talk about, hey, the Knicks want to be able to maintain flexibility to trade for a star. That's just the conversation we have around the Knicks all the time. But RJ Barrett is the package. Like, that's the guy. So if RJ Barrett shows up and you think that guy is going to be an all-star, all of a sudden the Knicks package looks a lot better. And if he struggles, as he has at points this season, then all of a sudden the Knicks package doesn't necessarily stand up to some of the better ones of a team, another team with young players, Atlanta or something like that wants to make a Godfather offer for the same players. So, it's kind of difficult to figure out right now. We got 6 weeks till the deadline or whatever it is. But I don't really see a big trade, something massive happening before then.
I want to ask you as well about Derrick Rose. You wrote about him during the week. You said that he was basically the Knicks' most important player this season. How are they going to navigate this stretch now without him? Because I agree with you. I think he has been the Knicks' most important player this season. And the fact that they're kind of relying on Derrick Rose at this stage of his career, to be that guy for them, I think speaks volumes in itself.
Yeah. Also speaks volumes. It speaks volumes in both directions. Speaks volumes of the team. also speaks volumes of like, man, Derrick Rose is the most important player on a team.
What
Can
are
you
we,
believe?
2010?
Yeah, he was the most important player on their team. You could make a real argument he was the most important player on their team after they acquired him last year, even though Randle was the deserving All NBA player. And I voted for Randle for All NBA, and I was not covering the Knicks then. You can't call me a homer because I voted for Randle for All NBA. I was covering the Wizards at the time. I put him on All NBA. I voted for him for Most Improved Player. Randle was deserving in my mind of all of those accolades. And I still think you can make the argument, especially after the playoffs when Rose was great against Atlanta and Randle really, really struggled. I think you can make the argument Rose was their most important player then. I mean, he runs that bench unit and controls pace, controls the offense, just kind of leaves fingerprints. I think like if you just kind of created a fingerprint metric, I think Derrick Rose would lead the Knicks in fingerprints. Yeah. Like his fingerprints are more stuff the Knicks do than any other player. You know what I mean? I don't think they can replace him because they don't have another guy like him. That said, Kemba Walker has been really, really good in these last 4 games. I mean, he's been legitimately really good.
He's the conference player of the week.
Yes, he was. And he's been, I wrote today about it's not just the counting numbers with Kemba. It's not just that he's averaging, what is he averaging since he went in the starting lineup? Like 26 a game, I think.
Something like that. 25, right. 9 and 8 or something like that. 25, 9 and 8. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just that he's putting up ridiculous counting stats. It's the way he's playing too. He's taking on a significantly increased burden. You look at kind of, he's running, for example, I had a stat in my story today. The 18 games he played before he got benched, he was running about 35 pick and rolls per 36 minutes. In the 4 games since he re-entered the starting lineup, and that's been without Rose, he is running like 46. So he's up like 20% in terms of the amount of pick and rolls he's running per minute. The amount of dribbles per touch is up 10, 15%. He's a quarter of his shots basically have been pull-up 3-pointers in which he took at least 7 dribbles to get there. Like he is running tons of pick and rolls. He's creating his own offense. He's creating offense for teammates. That wasn't what he was doing early in the season. Like that stat, pull-up threes after 7 dribbles, he's taking twice as many now as he was during those first 18 games. He's just creating offense in a totally different way than he was early in the season. And he talked about how he didn't want to step on guys' toes early in the year. And I don't think he's using that as a cliche. Like, I think he really did believe that because you don't have to believe a guy's words. Just look at their actions, That's and right. His actions are showing he is taking the reins more than he was early. And I think it's plausible. Part of that is because he was sitting on the bench and he came back and he was like, well, screw this. I'm not giving that up again. Part of it might be because Derrick Rose isn't there and other guys are out and in health and safety protocols and they need him. But that's like the Kemba Walker we're used to seeing, the guy who just has no inhibitions on the court, which is what made him a 4-time All-Star before. So I think, quite honestly, the answer to how do they make up for not having Derrick Rose, it's hope that Kemba looks like former Kemba. And part of that is hopes. And part of that is, which might be unrealistic in parts. And part of it is just like, hey, he has kind of looked like it for the last 4 games. So, hope for the best beyond that.
All right. Last question on the Knicks, Fred. Do they make the playoffs this season?
Does the play-in count as the playoffs?
Yes. Yes, we'll count that.
Yeah, I think they could squeeze into the bottom part of the play-in.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it's really tough. Like, there are 12 teams that wouldn't surprise me if they got there, but I think they in Atlanta are going to get back in. There are all these other teams that are now, everyone's going to deal with the COVID roaring through their roster at some point. The Knicks have gotten it over with now to a degree. So they also have a stretch coming up right now. They're in the midst of 14 consecutive games against teams 500 or worse. and they're only one game into this stretch, so they've got 13 more to go. They really have a chance to reel off some wins. And when I say reel off wins, I don't think they're going to win 10 out of the 14 or 11 out of the 14. But if they just play a little bit better, that gets you to 10. They're not that far back from 10, from 9. So I think they can get from 9 to 10. The question is that what you aspire to after a 4 seed? So I think the goal coming into the season should have been not necessarily if you don't get 4 again like they did last year, then it's a failure. I don't believe that. I think just like maintaining competency should be the goal. They still have a chance to reach maintaining competency, even though 15 and 18, I don't think reaches that standard. So we'll kind of see what happens, but I don't know if 9th or 10th is what you should really be dying to get to. But I think I'll say they're going to go there, and I'll let you guys laugh at me if I'm wrong.
Listen, I'm probably going to be a deluded Knicks fan, but I agree with you. We'll see. It's still a long way to go. You said they've got an easy run. Knowing the Knicks, they could potentially just go 4-9 over the next 13 games. So who knows? Fred, we're going to let you go. Before we let you go, we always take a look at some games that we've got coming up on the schedule and do some predictions. 8 games on the NBA slate today. We're going to take a look at 4 of them real quick here. We've got the Miami Heat and the Washington Wizards. Miami $1.38 favorites. Washington $3.10. The line is at 6. Total is at 208. That one's live on NBA League Pass. Fred, the Heat are 21-13. They've won 3 in a row since dropping that game to Detroit last week. I'm going to go with Miami at home in this one here.
Yeah, Wizards have a ton of guys in protocols right now too. So they're missing Beal, missing Pope. They're missing a bunch of other guys. So yeah, Miami.
I'm losing track of who's in and out of these.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
All right. Next game we're going to take a look at is the New York Knicks and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Surprisingly, the Knicks are favorites here, $1.50. Timberwolves $2.64. Lines at 4.5. Totals at 2.11. Also live on League Pass. Fred, any developments there player-wise for the Knicks? I saw Miles McBride is out of protocols.
Yes. You finished that sentence with a hesitation. Yeah. You were going to say Miles McBride is out. And I was like, no, he's not. Of protocols. Well done.
You just don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Wayne Selden is in them now. I don't know if McBride is actually going to play against Minnesota because like some guys need an extra day to ramp up because they haven't done conditioning for a week and a half, 2 weeks. Like RJ Barrett and Manuel quickly, they came out of protocols but took an extra game where they just needed to get their conditioning back before they could play. I would assume that Emmanuel quickly is going to be back for this one as well. He's been out of the protocols for a few days now, so I would guess that quickly ends up coming back for this. The Wolves are. This is going to be boring analysis. NBA is such. This is silly for me to say this because I want you to go read my work, but the NBA is so stupidly boring right now because my analysis is the Wolves have guys in protocols and the Knicks don't have that many anymore. So I think the Knicks will win.
Every time I pick the Knicks, they always lose. And every time I don't pick the Knicks, they end up winning. So, look, Minnesota's playing on the second night of a back-to-back. I'm going to go with your pick as well. I think the Knicks win this one in a close one tonight. Next game on the schedule, Lakers and Rockets. Lakers $1.45, Rockets $2.80. Lines at 5.5. Total is at 225.5. Also live on NBA League Pass. This doesn't really move the needle for me, this game, because the Rockets haven't been good. The Lakers haven't been good. Rockets had their little surge, but they're back on the bottom of the West. They've lost 4 straight again. Lakers have lost 5 straight. So someone's going to break that losing streak today. Fred, who's it going to be?
It's in LA, right? No, it's in Houston.
In Houston.
Screw it. I'll say the Lakers. They look so. I have to say I never bet on sports, any sports ever, except for maybe if I'm at Summer League, I go to a casino and I watch a Yankee game and I bet on a Yankee game that day, and maybe that's it. That's the only time. If I bet on sports, and you told me I had to bet on 29 different teams in the NBA throughout the season, and I could not bet on one team, just choose one team, never to have to bet on their games, I would never bet on Laker games. Their variance is so great that I would even throw out games. The other night against Brooklyn, they're down 20 some odd points and they end up going on that run at the end and they almost pull off a big comeback. It's just their variance is so tremendous. That's Russell Westbrook's variance is so tremendous. He was 4 for 15 in the restricted area the other night. I guess I'll go with the Lakers, but as you can tell, I'm not betting my life.
Okay. Well, for what it's worth, the Rockets are 7-7 at home, and the Lakers are 10-10 on the road. So
perfect.
Yeah, it's dead even there. Look, I'm going to go with the Lakers as well. Last game on the schedule: Nuggets at Warriors. The Warriors are big favorites, as you would imagine. $1.32. Nuggets 365. Line 7.5. Total at 217. That one's live on ESPN. Jokic is hooping. The Warriors have won 3 straight. Draymond Green is in protocols. I still think the Warriors have enough to get past the Denver Nuggets.
Am I picking just money line, or am I picking with the -0.5, 7.5 line?
Give us whatever you want.
All right. So I think the Warriors will win the game, but if I were betting with the spread, I'd go Denver. I think no Draymond in this matchup I think that's very tough for them. And you know what? I am more confident in the Lakers pick. I am. Houston turns the ball over like crazy. That is the sloppiest team. And if the Lakers are ever going to score, it's in transition, not in the half court. So I'm feeling good about my Lakers pick. I'm feeling good about my Warriors money line and Denver plus 7.5 pick.
There you go. We'll see how that all pans out by the end of the evening. Fred, it's been a pleasure chatting hoops with you once again. It's been too long. Miss our conversations in the NBA media rooms, throughout the country. So thank you very much for jumping on the show today. Hopefully we get to have you on, throughout the season as the season goes on as well.
Yes, I'm always thrilled to come on. No, I'm always thrilled to come on. It's great hanging out.
We'll wish you a great new year, and hopefully the Knicks beat doesn't take its toll on you by All-Star Weekend. This has been another episode of the Last Shot NBA show. We'll be back again on Friday morning. See you guys then.